Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, it's good to be back. I've been
Where'd you go?
I was on vacation, and then I had a Monday off, and it was weird. Everything was weird, but now we're back to normal. You and I doing this show together. And as always, Mike, really quickly, do us a favor. Like and subscribe on this video. If you are watching on the YouTube, please do that. It helps us out and makes our lives easier, a lot easier, because you guys support us and support the channel. Our first question is from Marty Bird's Proxy, though, who asks, was this Tennessee game an outlier, or are we headed back down last year's path? I know it's only one game, but there were a lot of red flags.
Well, I don't know about last year's path. I know that this is a better team than a year ago, but you may have the same path because the conference is a lot tougher. Now, look, I know Razorback fans are discouraged. Arkansas lost by, 24 points. Okay, that looks really bad. Anybody see the Oklahoma-Alabama game? I did. Oklahoma was undefeated. I had watched them several times in November and December. They're very good. They lost by 28. They made a lot of the same mistakes Arkansas made. They didn't shoot well. They didn't rebound well. They were not aggressive enough. They missed free throws. They didn't play good defense. All of the things that got Arkansas beat. I'm not making excuses. I think Cal laid it out pretty much. I think he said that he decided not to do a shoot around. And because of that, and look, that's not uncommon, you know, because your dad's a basketball coach. When you have an early game and you're on the road, a lot of times if you're going to get up and play at 12 o'clock, you're not going to get guys up at 7 in the morning.
No, 6 in the morning,
and have them do shoot arounds.
Yeah.
You just let them sleep a little bit, and then they get up and get ready for the game. But he said that maybe that had something to do with their poor shooting. He didn't know. He said he'd worked them so hard on the rebounding part and the physical part of the game that he felt like maybe they were a little worn down, so they needed the rest. And then he said it didn't do us any good because we didn't play good defense. So what happens in a situation like this? They were up early and then started missing shots. And I've always felt like shooting is a little bit contagious in terms of making shots and not making shots. And it's sort of like golf. As long as you do this by muscle memory, you do most things in sports by muscle memory. If you have to stop and start thinking about it, so what causes you to think about shooting? When you miss a shot, and then another one, you start thinking, oh, am I doing something wrong? And then other people are watching it, and then it happens to them, and then it just spreads. This team has been shooting the ball really well before that game. I think they'll shoot it well again. The thing with Nelly Davis is concerning because he had finally gotten back to where he was shooting pretty well, and then I guess he re-injured his wrist, and now he's got problems with it again, so he's going to have to go through that process again. Jonas Adu, a lot of people are saying, well, what was his deal? Well, he had the flu last week. Okay, he's over it, but if you ever had the flu, what does it do to you for the next week or so? You're weak.
Yeah.
You're not back to normal. You may not be sick anymore, but you're out of energy. So to me, that explains what happened there. I thought he played okay. They didn't go to him much. They didn't try to go inside much to him. I thought he was all right. And then you said you'd heard Boogie Flan. You'd heard he might have had the flu.
And again, I can't confirm that, but I saw people talking about that on social media, that he was sick. And so that's another thing.
So, look, it's not the end of the world. The way I look at it, and I know you think there's one more game that they're going to play on the road that could be tougher than this one, and that's the Kentucky game.
Yes.
But this was in the biggest arena in the SEC, 22,000 fans. They were mad at Jonas Adu.
Oh, so they were booing him a whole lot.
So they had a reason to get mad. And I just think you look at these other road games, I'm not saying they're going to be easy, but I don't think they're going to be like that. So we'll see. I think it's a little early to start panicking because of this.
It is a little early to start. You don't want to hit the panic button yet. And I said that on our show this week, on my basketball show, Full Court Press with Dusty Hannas. I said this past week, I said, don't fret if they lose to Tennessee. There's a lot of people that think this team will lose to Tennessee just based on what's happened in the non-conference slate and with all the injuries they've been dealing with. And basically, you go out there and this team is still figuring things out. I hate to say that, but that's what they're doing right now. And so I said, don't fret if they lose to Tennessee. Here's where you can fret, Mike. If they go into this week and they lose to both Ole Miss and Florida, I think that there's something to be said about
those are good teams.
They are.
You have to play well at home to even beat them. So.
I agree with you, but I hope that they can beat one of them. That's my hope.
Oklahoma is one you would need to worry about because they're good.
Yeah.
I think
You mean Ole Miss or Florida? You mean Florida? Florida, yeah.
Did I say Oklahoma? I meant
You're
Florida.
Good.
Florida is a team that went on the road, the only road team that really made a close game of it. They went to Kentucky and lost by 6.
Yeah, and I think we have a question about who impressed you after the opening weekend. They're my answer. That's a little teaser ahead to that. But Fire Eric says, interesting username, Fire Eric.
Wonder who Eric was.
Eric Musselman? I mean, he's not here anymore. But after not appearing on the opening night of the Coaches Show to attend Game 3 of the World Series, and then to this past weekend canceling a shoot-around to attend an NBA jersey retirement, I believe we can officially call Arkansas basketball the Calipari cruise. Should fans be worried that Calipari is cruising through his job after displaying a lack of interest in the fan base as well as preparation for the job? Whoa, this question is a doozy, Mike.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with that. I almost don't know where to start. But I'll start with, can we officially do this? What do you mean officially? First, what is official? And secondly, who's we? It sounds like to me that you are doing this. You're declaring it Calipari Cruise Year. He's also, as far as we know, incorrect about his reason for not being on that coach's show. We believe he was off recruiting, and he happened to go to that playoff game while he was there.
And he also did call in to the coaches show. They reminded me of that when I asked them about that. They were like, he called in and made sure that
he's not just blowing off the fans. He had a recruiting visit. He did that, and then while he was there that night, he went to a game. But like you say, he called in. The other one is completely wrong. He did not cancel the shoot-around to go to an NBA retirement ceremony. He did that after the game was over. The team flew back. He went on, and he went to that retirement ceremony because it's one of his former players. Yeah. It's one of the things that I like about him is that he doesn't just treat his players like, okay, well, bye, you're not playing for me anymore. He really does this to a lot of his former players. Now, as far as blowing off the fans, I mean, come on. Last summer, he went around the state, meeting with different people and being in front of the fans at different parts of the state. There's a complaint floating around right now that the football coaches no longer go to these Razorback Club meetings. I haven't looked into that to see how valid it is, but you can't accuse Cal of doing that. And he also took his players around and had them go, and they were giving out sneakers to underprivileged kids, and he had the players do that.
Yeah, and wash their feet with the Samaritan's Feet program.
With the feet program. So this idea that he's somehow blowing off the fans and he's just here cruising along, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's frankly the kind of garbage you usually get on the internet on X, not on Hogville. Yeah. So it's bogus. That's all we'll say. It's bogus.
There's a lot of things wrong here. And also, you've got to understand that Calipari stays busy. He is always focused on the team. And so even when he's going out and doing these appearances and going around, he's his own brand. That's what you get when you have a basketball coach that's like this, that is a Hall of Fame basketball coach. Yeah. You can't really hate on the fact that, hey, he might go over here and visit with his former players. He might go over here and bundle it in with the recruiting visit. The man stays busy. The man stays busy. That is just what he does.
And I also know that those of us in the media like it when he occasionally has one of his assistant coaches do a press conference because we get to talk to them.
I love it.
We don't want to just talk to the head coach. We want to know what another coach thinks about various things. It's one of our complaints about Pittman, that he only lets in season himself talk. He doesn't let any of his assistant coaches talk.
I love hearing from Kenny Payne, Coach Coleman. Like, it is really refreshing to get their perspective on the team too, and it also shows how much Cal trusts them and trusts them of getting in front of the media.
Honestly, I think Pittman got that from Kirby Smart, who got that policy from Nick Saban, and I think it's a fear that an assistant coach is going to say something in a press conference that sort of dispute something you've said.
Exactly.
And you just have to trust your coaches
And
not be so sensitive that they might disagree with you on something.
Correct, and it's lovely. It shows that the coaching staff all has good feelings about each other. He trusts them, they trust. I mean, it's just good. So I agree
Hall of
with you.
Fame coach, and he's already dogging the guy. Not even halfway through his first year here.
Now, you would expect that maybe year
that's
3,
Arkansas
year 4.
fans on the internet, usually. That's what you usually get on the internet.
Absolutely. Hog Redneck wants to know which SEC team impressed you most in week 1 of conference play and which one was the least impressive. Ooh, I liked Alabama. I thought Texas looked bad against A&M, which also wasn't that impressive.
Yeah, I would go with Alabama too.
Okay.
They just destroyed a really good Oklahoma team. And they played like Tennessee, they played hard the whole game. They were still trying to score in the last minute. And they had energy, they were rebounding, and they were doing all this stuff. And I had thought earlier in the year that Alabama might be off a little bit, but they just were playing lights out in that game. And the team that kind of disappointed me a little bit was Auburn, because they had Missouri down 25 at one point, and Missouri's another good team. And they had them down by 25, maybe with 9 or 10 minutes to go, and then just let off the gas a little bit, started messing around, missing shots, getting out, rebound a little bit, turning the ball over. And it got down to, I think, a 16-point game. So they gave up 9 points. They let those guys come back 9 on them. And so that was, to me, a little bit of a sign that at least if you're comparing Auburn with Alabama, with Tennessee, maybe they weren't quite as impressive.
Okay, all right. I see here as well.
It's hard to say somebody's not impressive when they win by 14 at home or 16 or whatever, but.
And that's why I make a case, honestly, you could make a case for a lot of SEC teams that they were really impressive. I thought Florida, even though they lost,
How
that was
about
really
Vanderbilt?
impressive.
They're the only SEC team to win on the road, which puts LSU in a real hole because they've already lost at home.
It's crazy. The league is just so good this year. Again, we talk about don't hit the panic button just yet, because you could lose half of your games in conference play. I mean, you could go under 500 and still be considered for the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's just crazy. S. Giles says, I've heard that Nellie Davis got one of the biggest NIL deals. If so, was that money wasted? He stayed hurt and is a shadow of the player he was at Florida Atlantic. He averaged 18 points per game there. It's almost 10 less here.
Yeah, I don't think you can blame him for an injury. And I don't think you can blame Cal and say, you should have known he was hurt. Don't offer him that kind of money. I don't think he realized this was going to continue to be an issue. And I wouldn't give up on him just yet. If he comes back by even the middle of the SEC race, that gives him several games to get ready, and then he can go through the SEC tournament and then on to the end of the NCAA tournament. I think he and Jonas Adu both have to be playing a lot better than they are right now in order for Arkansas to do anything in the NCAA tournament.
And I really think it's one of those things where I see all the time, Nellie Davis, oh gosh, he was wasted money on social media. That's all that gets put on social media. I think you have an argument for that. If he can't get healthy throughout the entire season, yes, it's wasted money in my opinion.
But I mean, does anybody really believe that kid doesn't want to play?
No.
He's faking. This is the whole point.
No.
I mean, you know he wants to be out there. He's a basketball player. You think he likes this situation? This is the thing, and this is what happens when you start paying a lot of money. You get this criticism of, hey, you're just get the money and you're goofing around. I don't know that happens to players, maybe some, but players are usually competitive enough. They're not going to get money and then just sit on their butts and not care how they play.
No, they still love the game. You may think that they don't. They still love the game, and that is a truth right there. PHAT wants to know, with all of the secondary issues this year, was the secondary coordinator, Darren Wilson, leaving the team a leadership issue or Darren's decision? Do you know who the team is looking at as a replacement?
We haven't heard anything about a replacement yet. It was his decision. No, they didn't fire him.
Yeah.
Sam Pittman said at the end of the year, I think he even said it after the bowl game, he said he didn't expect any staff changes.
He said it before the bowl game, which I thought was pretty, he said he didn't expect any staff changes.
Changes. I think what happened here is Georgia State, as mid-majors go, is a pretty good program most years. You know, so you get a job like that, you get to be a defensive coordinator, and then you use that job to get maybe in a Power 4 conference a defensive coordinator. You know, what if he ends up back here at some point, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it could happen. So this is how you move up. So no, there's nothing unusual about this.
Yeah, and we'll keep you updated on our website. If we do hear anything about who they're looking at or anything through the rumor mill or anything like that, we post it all on our website. Otis Kirk is on that all the time. When there's something that's out there, he's posting something about it. So that's over on our website if you want to keep up with that, with the latest there. Top Hog 19 asks, who are some of the names you think might make a good GM for the Hogs? How big of a staff will be needed? Will it be paid for by the U of A or the Razorback Foundation?
Well, it will be paid for by by the athletic department.
Yeah.
It'll have to come out of their budget, and they do get money from the foundation, so it's either of those. Names, you dreamed up one that sounds very good to me.
I said before the show, I think Raleigh Williams. I think if they were really looking at
Former Razorback, broke his neck,
Yep.
tried to come back and play and got hurt in a spring practice and then just had to give it up.
But now he has experience in that world of NIL deals. He has a sports agency that he runs and everything. I think he kind of knows that world.
I think the problem with him is he's probably making more money running this company than he would make here.
Yeah.
Here's the problem I see with this anywhere, much less here. How much you pay this GM is going to come out of your budget, and how much of that budget do you need to pay to fulfill your complete obligation to go up to your cap on the money you're giving players. It's very important to meet the cap, because if you don't meet the cap, you're falling behind other SEC schools. So you want to be able to meet that cap. Well, that means you got to reduce expenses somewhere or generate the money somewhere else. So if you start paying GM $150,000, $200,000 a year, is that money that could be spent in other ways? I go back to something Sam Pittman said when he was asked about this whole issue, where he said at some point in the offseason he's going to sit down with Hunter Yurachek and they're going to talk about this. But he said, look, it's not like we coaches don't know what our budget should be and how to manage our budget. We know the value of each of the players that we have, and if we have to start assigning value within a budget, we're perfectly capable of doing that. I think the value of somebody to do this, of a GM type, is that the coaches don't have to go face-to-face with the players in the negotiations. It still could be coming, the information could still be coming from the coaches, but somebody else is dealing with them. And so
somebody who has experience there too.
Yes. So you hire somebody that knows PR, knows how to talk to people without making them mad, maybe knows how to negotiate a little bit. Here's something that I don't know yet because it hasn't been made clear, at least as far as I'm concerned. Are these agents, these NIL agents, are they going to start moving into this? Because this is not an NIL. This is, you're not dealing with an entity away from the university that's offering money. This is money coming directly from the athletic department. So could an NIL agent, an athlete's NIL, go in there and get involved in the negotiations with this GM or with the coaches? Would they maybe they would say, get out of here. You got nothing to do with what we do here. I would say that if I were a coach, I'd say get out.
I think you can have, and I think the bigger issue there, I think obviously your NIL agent should be in those conversations and work with the GM.
But it's not an NIL. It's revenue sharing.
It is. So I think it would be good for them to have their NIL agent there, and I don't think they can bar them from the meeting, but
I would.
I know you would,
Say,
but
get out.
The bigger issue, and I think Sam Pittman mentioned it, is that a lot of people, some of us knew that this was going on, but he kind of admitted to it, is that you don't have to have any certification to be an NIL agent. Your cousin can be your NIL agent, your brother can be your NIL agent, your mom, your dad.
I just
got
reading an article over the weekend about some of the fees that these NIL agents are charging their players, some 25, 30%, when it's supposed to be way less than that.
When they're not even legit. I mean, it was Rodney Hill who talked about how he got by an NIL agent. they need to have stricter rules on who can be an NIL agent. They need to do that because that's a way that you can clean up some of the mess that's going on right now with NIL agents. That's personally my opinion there.
So again, as far as a GM type, we don't know who it'll be, but Courtney thinks it should be somebody that at least knows how to do. I think just get somebody that'll do what the coaches say.
Okay.
And somebody that can be a tough guy to the athletes and say, hey, this is all you're getting, too bad, get
somebody
lost.
that's skilled in negotiation.
Because it's not like they have an option. This is not going to be like what we're talking about with the portal, where you just start jumping somewhere else.
No.
This is where you negotiate with how much of a chunk you get out of that big pie. And if you don't like it, you've already probably agreed to something.
Right.
So if you want a raise the next year, they give it to you, they don't.
Yeah, so someone who has seen that side of negotiations, that's what somebody with experience. So if you in the comments want to give us who you would hire as Arkansas's GM, let us know because I'd love to see what you guys have to say about that. Okay, John Calloway wants to know, which is it? The SEC lost bowl games because our conference wasn't as strong this year, or the SEC has better players and lost more skilled players to draft or NIL offers, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it really has a lot to do with NIL because what happened was when you start paying players this money, you're able to pull good players away from other big programs. Like Alabama could no longer stockpile the way they used to. Georgia could no longer stockpile the way they used to. So it balanced out the league more. But it's also this money decision the SEC made when they decided, oh, we've got to get bigger so we can get more TV money. We're going to invite Texas and Oklahoma into this league. So they invited, it was already tough. You invited 2 more programs in here that year in and year out are going to be tough, and you just made it tougher on a league where it was already tough. Now you may say, well, Oklahoma wasn't very good this year. Now what they did, they knocked Alabama out of the playoffs. If there's no Oklahoma, if you've got 14 teams instead of 16 this year, you don't have Oklahoma knocking Alabama out of the playoffs. And Texas knocked A&M out of the playoffs. If Texas is not in this league, A&M probably goes to the playoffs. So the SEC did itself in with greed. We got to be bigger. We got to get more TV money. We got to make this league tougher. We don't care. And too bad. And this is what you get as a result of this. You basically get a league that's more balanced because of NIL, and then they just beat each other up.
And I do think what John Calloway is saying a little bit about lost more skilled players to the draft and opt-outs and all of that. There is some of that to be said as Alabama lost players. Then you also had South Carolina. Rocket Sanders wasn't playing in that bowl game. I think that bowl game would have been different if Rocket Sanders was playing in it. So I do think there is something to be said about a little bit of both there, right? That the SEC got tougher, like you said, because they added 2 more teams to it.
And NIL spread the talent out more.
And NIL spread the talent more. It's a lot. It's not like you can pinpoint one exact thing. I think there's a few things to be said about that. Dr. Starks asks, what's your solution for the seemingly unbalanced football schedules within the conference? And do the ADs have any say or influence in the process currently?
Well, when you mention unbalanced, if you're talking about the schedule, especially starting next year, you're going to play every team in the SEC either 1 year or in a 2-year period or in the next 2-year period, because this is their goal. And I think that's pretty much happened in this go-round. Not completely, but they're going to really change it up starting in 2026. And the goal is you're going to play at least half the SEC teams 1 year and at least half the other the next year. You'll have some permanent opponents that you will keep. But that solves the problem of the unbalanced schedule. If you're playing this all the same people, it's not like this team is going to have this hard schedule and another one's going to have it easy. Everybody's going to be playing everybody. The real problem is when you play, and this is not determined by the ADs, it's determined by the networks. They're the ones that come in and say, you know what, Arkansas is going to be at 11 a.m. Arkansas is going to be at 11 a.m. Oh, they're playing Texas. That's a big rival. We'll let that be a night game. But a lot of these schools like Arkansas are not going to get night games because the networks don't want them on at night unless they're playing somebody they consider a big rivalry game. And so if your program is struggling like Arkansas's is right now, like maybe Mississippi State's is right now, you're going to be playing a lot of 11 a.m. games, and that's got nothing to do with the ADs. It has everything to do with the network talking directly to your conference commissioner, and your conference commissioner is one that led the charge. Let's get bigger, better. Let's get bigger TV deals. Let's make more money. When you get more money out of the TV people have more say in your business. Is there a solution? Yeah, but it'll never happen.
Okay.
The solution is stop spending money like you got to spend more and more and more. I understand you're always going to have an arms race hiring good coaches. That's always going to go on. But you don't have to build a new practice facility every 4 or 5 years. You don't have to put waterfalls in your practice facility. You don't have to spend some of the money these schools have been spending just to say, hey, look at us. You could actually say, we'll take a little bit less money. We'll be more conservative the way we do it. Why do we have to have all these analysts on a staff? You know what that costs? What if we all agreed we're not going to put analysts on these staff? The coaches should be able to analyze. They used to in the old days. What did they do before they were analysts? They did their own analyzing.
They were their own analysts.
So how about instead of figuring out ways to spend more and more money, how about say, we could do with less. We don't want all this TV money. We're not going to let TV tell us what to do anymore. Because you know what TV's doing right now? They're on a mission within a few years of telling SEC schools you can no longer play mid-majors. Every one of your non-conference games has to be with the Power 4 school. And again, that's not good when every single week you're playing somebody that can beat you. And you just don't know. Do the fans like that? Are you kidding me? Do you really think Arkansas fans or any other fans like what's fixing to happen in SEC basketball, where they know they could be good and still lose half their games?
Yeah.
That's what you get because you made your league even tougher, and you've got all this money and everybody's spending all this money. And what are you going to do? You can sit around, we're the SEC. Okay, good. Now you beat each other up is what you do. That's what you do because you're good.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike, you make a great point there, but it's all about money.
Sure it is, but you
all
could
about
say,
that money.
but you could at some point say, money matters, but it doesn't have to be the only thing. We're not going to let the networks tell us what to do. We're going to do what our fans want.
But they need that money, especially now, even more than money is even more important because of NIL and revenue sharing and all of that. They need that money. It's not going to happen. I like your
No,
wishful,
it's not.
I like your wishful thinking,
No, it's
though.
not. I agree.
I like your wishful thinking, though. Pork Tongue asks, what do you see as the biggest results of winning even this minor bowl game?
Well, I think the biggest result is I think it helped NIL. They've got a good NIL class now. They just added another offensive lineman. I think they've got 5 or 6 now, and they lost 4, I believe. So I think what they're trying to do is give themselves options when they decide who the starters are next year. Oh, we have to start this guy because we brought him in and he's experienced and nobody else is better. So now they've got options. They've also got some good players coming back. So I think their goal was to have options on the offensive line. I think they're going to have options. I think you're also going to have depth to where you don't have to put a guy in and play him every snap. If he gets tired or something, you can put another guy in. Or if he gets hurt, you don't have a drop-off if you bring another guy in. So that was one of the results that we've seen so far is they've really added some good offensive linemen to this group. They've gone in, I think, and added some good receivers. They still may get another one. They're still looking for a linebacker, still looking for another safety. And they may or may not get what they want. But I think the portal class, if they had lost, would not be what it is right now. So that's a real practical benefit. Now, some people think that, oh, they won the bowl game, that means ticket prices are going up. I don't think they're going to raise ticket prices for football. I think they may raise them for basketball because they've got to have that money to pay all those basketball players. So that could happen. But in the final analysis, to me, the best thing about winning a bowl game, any bowl game, go ask somebody whose team lost their bowl game. Go ask A&M fans. They're arguing with each other like crazy right now. Go ask Oklahoma fans. They're going nuts.
South Carolina fans.
South Carolina
going
bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, ask any of these teams that lost bowl games, even Georgia, which lost a playoff game. When you lose the last game of the year, You're always kind of thinking about it. And so at least for this year, Arkansas fans won't be griping about football because they won the last game.
No, they're still griping, Mike.
Yeah,
Hold on, hold on.
Some of them are. But I think I read more and more every day people being happy about that bowl win.
All right. Well, I see a lot of hate as well, but
that's because if you look on X, you will find it everywhere.
Oh, I just have those people on my feed, so I got to get them off my feed. GCoop17 asks, now that players are, Hot Dogger wants to know, my apologies. I skipped a question there. Do the players still get their NIL checks even when they ditch a playoff or bowl game?
Well, we're not there at every school, so we don't know for sure what the arrangement is. But all I will say about that is that if they do, you're a dummy, whoever you are, whoever the
You've
NIL,
done it wrong.
whoever the NIL people are stupid. It's our belief, our understanding, that you get paid for your NIL, what you do you have an obligation to get your NIL money. You have to do certain things. It's our belief that you do those things before you get the money.
Correct.
Therefore, if you didn't go to the bowl game, any NIL money you would have collected for being in that bowl game, you don't get.
Correct.
So it's sort of like you and I, anybody that works for a business, if we get paid twice a month.
Right.
Okay, do we get paid in advance for the work we're going to do
Nope.
for 2 weeks?
Nope.
When your 2 weeks is over, you put in your time card or whatever, and then a week later you get money for what you did 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
Okay, that's just the way it is. They're not stupid. They're not
No.
going to pay us to work before we
They're not
work.
going to give us a cash advance and go, we hope that
We
you'll
hope
work
you
here.
show up, but if you don't, I guess we're just out some money. So we
Yeah.
don't think
No.
that you get money for not fulfilling your NIL obligation.
No, because that leads into our next question from GCoop17, who asks, now that players are suing coaches over NIL, and he's talking about the Leonard Hamilton FSU situation, when will we see companies and universities start suing players?
Well, first of all, I don't think you're going to see any university sue, because NIL money is separate from the university. They would be suing the NIL people. They would do that. To me, it's a separate issue. If what he actually did was promise NIL money to these players and didn't deliver, I hope they got something in writing.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't, all he's got to do is just say, I didn't do that.
offer that money, yeah.
Yeah, but that lawsuit at least makes sense. Again, I don't think you're going to see the reverse of that, because I don't think anybody's dumb enough to give NIL money to an athlete for stuff they haven't done.
We go back to the point. You're not going to cash advance somebody and then say, hope you do your job, hope you do it.
We've even seen like radio stations that have guys appearing on their show. If they don't show up, they don't get the money.
No, yeah, it was a whole topic of conversation with Devo Davis last year. Oh, he's left the team. Does he do his NIL obligations?
Yeah.
It was very interesting to see, but again, it goes into that last player. If you're a company out there cash advancing these players, I want to have a chat with you. We need to talk about your business model there, okay? WV Hog Fan says JUCO players can now have 4 years of eligibility at a 4-year school. Potentially, that is 6 years of collegiate eligibility. When will players that leave early to go pro sue to get eligibility back if they don't make a pro team?
Well, that hasn't happened yet. It probably will sooner or later. It'll be interesting to see what the NCAA would do in that situation, because they've been caving on lawsuits lately. I'm just not sure. Look, here's one of the reasons I think that JUCO thing came into being. Think about this. Coaches got, and Sam Pittman was one of the first to admit this, coaches got very comfortable with being able to use players in the portal, bring in experienced players to solve problems. I have this really good offensive tackle last year. I lost him. The guy behind him is going to be an unproven freshman next year, redshirt freshman. Gee, we're going to have a problem. In the old days, that's what you'd have to deal with. But with the portal, you could just go try to find somebody like that. So coaches got really used to taking a problem and solving it immediately rather than trying to solve it through developing players up through their system. So that's going to start to go away next year when you don't have as much portal activity as you have right now. But one way you could still do that is if these JUCOs could come in and you could say to a JUCO, hey, you already have 2 years of playing time. It may not have been at the major college level, but you started for 2 years as an offensive tackle. We need somebody to start here. And oh, by the way, you could come here and play here 3 years and maybe go to the NFL. Yeah. So that's why I think that got approved. Now, would it be approved to a point where if a guy left the team and then went to the NFL and didn't make the team, he could come back and they say, we'll welcome you back? I don't know that you could go back to the team you left, but I could see if the NCAA legalized it, you could go back into the portal and somebody could go get you and say, hey, here's another guy that's really good and we'll bring him in here. But the problem is, again, he's still going to get paid based on the total budget for that athlete. It's not like he can come back and somebody will give him $6 million. Right. Because NIL deals won't be that big, and he's going to be paid out of a budget that has a cap on it. So I'm not even sure a player would try to do that, but if he did and sued, I hope whoever took the lawsuit would do it on consignment, because if you pay the guy to do it, you may lose.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I couldn't see it being completely out of the question. What will be interesting that this question that WV Hog Fan brings up is that JUCO ruling from the NCAA is only right now for this upcoming year. They don't know what's going to happen past that, right, because the NCAA is fighting back. And they're basically saying, whoa, whoa, we'll let it happen this year, okay? Whoa, but we're going to get our ducks in a row and sue and try and fight back on this.
Again, the reason I think that's happening is I think there are some coaches that like that idea of still being able to bring guys in that have experience. Yeah. But we'll see where that goes.
It's basically free development, right?
Yes,
you go out
you didn't have to develop this guy.
Yeah, exactly. You went to another school. Cool, come in here and you're already ready to go, yeah. Eddie Lynn asks, how would you rate the college football playoffs so far? There has been a lot of stinko games. Yeah, there hasn't there?
Yeah. Look, I said this last week. As long as you take the higher seeded team and then give them a home court advantage or home field advantage in the first round, you're going to get blowouts. I think the blowouts were by an average of something like 24 points a game, something like that, in the first round. And all of those teams that had the home field advantage won, and they won big. So I made the point last week, as long as that continues, you might as well just blow the first round off. You're going to get a good game once in a blue moon. There wasn't a single good game in the first round, not one.
Well, maybe because the seeding was incorrect. Maybe the seeding, to me.
I still think that wasn't it. I just think when you let somebody play at home, they've got a tremendous advantage. Now, you had a different issue the second round, because now you've taken teams that sat out and in most cases missed over 3 weeks between their last game to when they're going to play, and they went up against a team that had just played a playoff game. And what did we see in every single one of those games? In the first quarter, the team that had played I don't know if it was a week earlier, but it wasn't very long. The team that had sat out for 3 weeks just looked terrible. The only one that really came back and made a game out of it was Arizona State with Texas. They almost won.
That was fun.
Okay, so here's my evaluation. You've had 8 games played so far, right? One of them has been worth watching. Is this what everybody wants? Because this feeds back into this argument that people have said for years, well, there only needs to be 2 teams every year, or certainly no more than 4. I've always hated that logic. Yeah. And I still think if you do the playoffs right, you will get better games. Right. But not the way they're doing it right now.
Seed them correctly and maybe take strength of schedule into more consideration.
Well, maybe.
Come on, but I thought they would.
I don't like letting teams sit out. I think that puts them at a disadvantage.
I can agree with you there too, but this is the first year. Everyone on social media who's
going. And then people are saying, well, now if you don't have home field advantage in the first round, that you lose atmosphere. Well, what atmosphere do you have in the second round? Those are neutral games. Yeah. What atmosphere? You just suddenly go, oh, there's no atmosphere to this game. It's neutral. No, your championship game has always been neutral. Your semis will be neutral. What, do those just become no atmosphere games?
That's a terrible take. That's a terrible take, but I will say I agree with you there that they've got to figure it out, but it is the first year. Let them, I feel like they've got to figure some things out, and they're still figuring some things out. It wasn't going to be perfect this year. Everyone who said, oh, it was going to be perfect and the committee was going to get it right.
Look at the NCAA basket, and I had an argument with Evan or Jacob, probably both of them.
Probably.
Yesterday. And they're all saying, it's a different sport. Yes, basketball is a different sport from football, but what does that have to do with the playoffs? The model that the NCAA has used for the NCAA basketball tournament, it's one of the most popular things in sports every single year. March Madness is awesome.
Yeah.
And they've got it figured out. So maybe you ought to look at what they're doing.
It is, I do agree with Evan and Jacob. It is kind of like comparing apples to oranges just a little bit, because it is different sports and different things. And you can have more upsets, I believe, in basketball than football. And so I just think they need to go back and look at the model and change the model around, okay? That's all I'm saying. I think it will be better if they take a deep, hard look in the mirror and say, we didn't do it right this year. We're going to fix it by next year. That's what I think. Pig's Feet wants to know, do you think a Ken Hatfield triple option ball control offense would work in the SEC? The military academies seem to use it as a way to counter the size difference of other college teams.
If you ran his flex bone, which that's what that was a passing wishbone type or full house backfield with a quarterback that threw the ball. If you did that, and if you had the right quarterback, you could compete. But let me tell you what you're talking about, because there aren't many of these guys around. I don't take Taylor Green as an example of that, because what you would have to do is you'd have to have a quarterback that could take the ball, start down one side of the line of scrimmage, or maybe even if he's standing out of the shotgun, he's got to be able to read whether to hand that ball off based on blocking, based on the defense alignment and what's happening with the blocking. He looks and he reads. Either leaves that ball in the hands of the running back or he pulls it out. Now he starts to go down the line of scrimmage. Now he's got a decision to make. Can I turn up field? Is there a gap there? Do I do that? Do I pitch to my trailing back? Or do I pull up and throw the ball? And can I throw accurately? He has to be able to do all of those things. And that's a lot of stuff. And I just don't think, I think year in and year out, you would have a hard time finding a quarterback that could do all that.
Absolutely, and especially with what we just talked about earlier, with the talent of everybody else in the SEC.
Well, I mean, Taylor Green, he's got skills, you know, can run with the ball, throws it well, but the reading part, the decision-making part was what baffled him this year.
Yeah, you hope that he gets it figured out for next year. That's all.
Well, I'm just glad he's not running a triple option at the same time.
That's true. Hammerhead28 asks, why has no one invented a field goal simulator like they have for golfers? Instead of kicking into a net on the sideline, you kick it into the simulator and see if you have the distance and accuracy. You could even program the wind direction and miles per hour. You could put a net around the simulator so the ball doesn't go all over the place. They do have this, by the way.
They do?
They do. Yeah, I've used one before. It's really cool.
Well,
it's very similar to how they use it for golf. Very similar.
But they don't use it at games.
Well, no, because they have tracking technology at games. They track it using video and all these different things at games.
The players are kicking into a net. They're not over there kicking into a simulator.
No. What I'm saying is they track it live in games. Like using cameras and everything. They track it. Yeah, they have all that.
They can do that, but what he's talking about is having the feedback of kicking into a simulator and saying, oh, I'm a little bit off here, I'll make an adjustment, as opposed to just kicking it. So it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Here's the problem I see with it. If your contraption, whatever this thing is called, if your simulator, first of all, what are you going to load this thing up on a truck? I think if they
You mean like on the sidelines?
That's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about having these on the sidelines during a game.
Yeah.
So here's what you'd have to have in order to make this work. Each school would have to have 2 of them, and they just bring them out and set them up for the game so that each school, the home team and the road team, has a simulator. And they would all have to be the same.
Yeah.
You can't have one product here and another one. Everybody's using the same simulator. The problem would be if one of them broke down, then you would have to send word over to the other side. Hey, our guy's now having to kick into a net because the simulator is broken, so you got to too. But I think you could work that out.
Yeah, probably.
And I like the idea. I think it's good because here's what I would do if you had that. I would take a wind direction and wind speed device and put it underneath the crossbar, underneath the end, and have it feed both machines. So you could be sitting there looking while you're practicing as a field goal is coming up. You're practicing and you're seeing which way the wind is going, what the speed is, and then you're kicking and you see how accurate you are. You're going a little left, a little right. I love this idea.
No, it's great. I mean, they do have that. If you've been to like a simulator place where they have golf and they have baseball and they do it all on the same simulator. They can simulate multiple different
Right.
sports, but that's where we did the field goal one. And I'll be honest with you, I think maybe why it hasn't been implemented yet is because I noticed that when we used it, it was kind of at a party and it was fun and everyone was having a good time. It was a little inaccurate. I felt like it was a little
Maybe
inaccurate.
you guys were the ones that were inaccurate.
Maybe we were, but I just felt like I was.
Maybe the simulator was going, what the heck is going on here? These people are idiots. They're not kickers.
No, yes, I agree with you there. It was
I
probably
could see one.
error
I
as
could
well.
see one where the simulator goes drunk, inaccurate, reset.
I think it's a great idea, Hammerhead. It's a great idea. And if you haven't tried one of those field, I'm going to bring you to the one. I think they have one down the street at the Leroy or the Leroy.
Okay, whatever. I'm not a kicker, so I wouldn't even attempt.
I know, but then you can see what I'm talking about. I think you'd have a fun time. I was there in 1969. Asked, has the knee pad gone the way of the dinosaur? The game of football may be on its way to players wearing hot. I can't read this. It may be on its way to having players wear hot pants, a cup, and a helmet the size of Rosie, the Jetsons robot housekeeper's head.
Okay, let me try to disseminate that. First of all, let's talk about Rosie, the Jetsons robot housekeeper, or maid is what she was referred to. If you haven't watched the Jetsons, and it's an old TV series that is still on from time to time, this maid with this robot metal maid has a head about 3 times the size of a toaster, and it kind of looks like a toaster.
It looks like a toaster. That's what I was going to say.
So I think what he's basically making reference to is the fact that they have these padded helmets now that everybody wears in practice, and there's been some suggestion that they could incorporate them in games. Oh. And he's saying that would be stupid. Everyone would look stupid. But I like that idea. I've talked about how it's necessary because it's the one safety issue right now that they're totally overlooking because we have way too many concussions in football. This whole targeting thing would go away if you would have this stuff because you can't, it gives on the outside of the helmet as well as on the inside, and it would allow movement or space before you stop because in an impact, it's how much distance you're able to move before you come to a complete stop. And this would increase that and would allow you to avoid injuries and especially concussions in a much better way. So I would favor that. So
yeah.
If you end up looking like Rosie the maid, it's all right with me. The knee pad, however, I do agree they ought to bring it back. And here's why. I've seen players had their kneecap split in 2 pieces.
Yeah, I knew you were
because they got hit directly on the helmet. The knee by a helmet. I saw that happen in high school, and the kid was one of my teammates. He never played again. Now, they don't have operations the way they do now, but it's not an easy fix depending on the way the injury occurs.
Yeah, not if you shatter your kneecap.
So I just don't understand why they're allowing that. It's dangerous.
So I believe it was because a lot of the players, we talk about one of the reasons why they don't do the helmet thing, right, is because it's the look. Players want a certain look. But the other reason why, which I thought was kind of interesting, was that players believed, especially players that relied on speed and agility, like wide receivers, cornerbacks, would say that they believed it affected their speed and agility. But the funny thing is, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I don't think there was any actual data that backed up that it affected their speed and agility. I don't think it actually they believed it did.
Yeah, I think they want to look cool.
I think they wanted to look cool.
And if it turns into, what did he talk about? What do you call it?
Hot pants, cup, and the helmet the size of Rosie.
Yeah, they want to end up looking like they're wearing hot pants. I'm not for that. So.
Yeah, I get that. I just think it's interesting that it's all about the look, right? All about how cool you look. And sometimes it's about safety.
Can you imagine if offensive linemen, if the pants came right up here below the pads on your knee, all the way up about 6 inches above the knee, look like they're wearing jorts?
I was about to say that George, Steve Spurrier would love that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
weird.
It's very weird. I don't know if I could get behind that either, but that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.